What's up, everybody? It's JT Sports Action Guys with another video, and I'm here with the Houston Texans versus the Detroit Lions, Week 2, 2019 NFL preseason preview. Going to be giving you guys some players to watch and some things to watch in this Week 2 preseason matchup between the Houston Texans and the Detroit Lions. Now, before I begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for NFL videos and NFL content daily. And also make sure to go ahead and subscribe to my other channel, my backup channel, in case this channel gets deleted, which will also be down in the description in the comment section down below. So the Houston Texans are coming off a loss versus the Green Bay Packers, and the Detroit Lions are coming off of a blowout loss versus the New England Patriots. And I mean, I was a little bit disappointed in the Detroit Lions' performance on both sides of the ball. I expected a lot more out of them, despite this being the preseason. Big thing to watch in this matchup for the Detroit Lions is the offensive line. Now, the offensive line on paper may look like they didn't play that well, and which they didn't play that well at all, but I mean, they didn't play as bad as what the stats show because their backup quarterbacks were god awful, and their quarterbacks were a big reason why they were sacked a bunch. So I'm not going to put the whole entire blame on the offensive line. The offensive line, to me, was probably responsible for only about 3, maybe 4 sacks, and then the rest were just on the quarterbacks. And I mean, Fells, I don't even know why he's even playing in an NFL game, man, because that guy looked like he had no idea what he was doing. He was 5 of 14, 62 passing yards, and threw 1 interception. So he looked like a deer in headlights out there, which is a big reason why they went ahead and signed Josh Johnson, who was probably the best available backup quarterback on the free agent market. So he's a pretty solid, reliable backup because from what we saw that last preseason game, they needed to go ahead and sign him because if Matthew Stafford got injured and they had those 2 guys back there playing backup quarterback, their season is doomed. Now, the Lions backup quarterback spot is another thing to look out for because they did sign Josh Johnson. So it's going to be interesting to see how he adds to the competition. But I highly doubt that he can do any worse than what those 2 and Tom Savage and Fells did against New England Patriots because they were god awful. And Fells, I don't even know. It's a strong chance he doesn't even make the roster. Now looking at the Houston Texans offensive line, their offensive line still going to be keeping an eye on their offensive line all throughout preseason. And I'm still looking for consistency there at that offensive line position. So every week I'm probably going to be keying in on the offensive line for the Houston Texans. Then I'm going to be looking at their halfback. Now, the Houston Texans halfbacks, they acquired Duke Johnson in the trade with the Cleveland Browns. So now it's going to be interesting to see how he ends up fitting in that Houston Texans halfback backfield with Lamar Miller. Hopefully he can take away some carries from Lamar Miller, which I strongly think that he will because this is a guy who is a very good receiving back. He can also line up and play slot as well, has very good hands out of the backfield. So it's going to be, I'm eager to see how that halfback competition ends up shaping up for the Houston Texans this season. Now, looking at some players to watch in this game, I'm going to be looking at quarterback Josh Johnson. I know they just recently signed him just not too long ago, but I'm pretty sure that he will be in this game. And despite him not really having a whole lot of knowledge in his playbook, I highly doubt that he can do any worse than what the Detroit Lions backup quarterbacks against the New England Patriots did last week because it was god awful. Don't know why. Tom Savage was 2 or 3 40 yards. Okay, he was okay, but then Fells, he was god awful. I'm surprised he was even in the game that long. So I'm going to be looking at Josh Johnson. Quarterback Josh Johnson is one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. Based on what he did last season. Now, a lot of Washington Redskins fans might say he's not that good or anything like that, but Washington Redskins fans fell to what they do when they critique Josh Johnson. They failed to say the fact that he still kept the Washington Redskins playoff hopes alive with a late win later in that season. He kept Washington Redskins fairly competitive in most of their games nearing the stretch, and I think if Washington would have won like 1 or 2 games, they could have still found a way to have squeaked into the playoffs. So Josh Johnson did what he was supposed to do. I thought he played exceptionally well, considering the fact that he came in there and had to learn the playbook really, really quick. Then I'm looking at the halfback position for the Detroit Lions. I'm looking at halfbacks Ty Johnson and Mark Thompson. Mark Thompson was very solid, in my opinion, from what he did last week. I was very impressed there. Don't really know if he's still going to be able to make the roster, but I like what I saw out of him. He had 4 carries, 21 rushing yards. I know those aren't incredible stats, but this guy had 5.2 yards per carry. And you don't really see halfbacks that have over even 4 yards per carry in the preseason simply for the fact that they don't get that much carries. And most of the offensive linemen that are blocking for them are second and third string guys who aren't even going to end up making the NFL roster. Then you look at guys like Ty Johnson. He was very exceptional as well. He had 3 carries for 22 rushing yards, and he was averaging 7.3 yards per carry as well. So both of those guys had high yards per carry averages, and that's very impressive to me considering the fact that some of the guys that are blocking for him were backup offensive linemen. So anytime you're able to have a high yards per carry in the preseason, I think that's going to be a good indicator that you should be on somebody's roster. So I'm looking at the wide receiver position. Not really a lot of things to really take away from what the wide receiver position did last week, simply for the fact that how terrible the backup quarterback positions was. Fells didn't make anybody look impressive neither, but Tom Kennedy had a pretty okay game. I mean, he only caught 1 pass, but it was for 29 yards. And Brandon Powell also caught 2 passes for 27 yards as well. So hopefully with Josh Johnson back there as quarterback, these guys will get more opportunities to shine, simply for the fact that the backup quarterbacks for the Detroit Lions, specifically Fells, didn't know what the heck he was doing back there. He's kind of costing guys their jobs and costing guys their NFL dreams. So I'm glad they signed Josh Johnson. Then I'm looking at the cornerback position. Amani Aruye was very, very impressive in my opinion. The guy had 5 tackles, and he was really, really, really solid. I like what I saw out of Amani Aruye, despite the fact that the Detroit Lions defense or the defensive backs that they had back there were getting carved up by the New England Patriots quarterbacks, specifically Jarrett Stidham as well and Brian Hoyer. But he was the quarterback that was pretty solid. He was the cornerback that was pretty solid for the Detroit Lions back there in that secondary. So I really like what I saw out of him. And I hope that he keeps it up and he can end up having a solid impact for the Lions when the season begins. Then looking at players to watch for this Houston Texans team, looking at Joe Webb. Joe Webb kind of had a mixed performance against the Green Bay Packers last week in Week 1. He had some good plays, and when he threw a touchdown, and he had some bad plays when he threw 2 interceptions, but he was 25 of 40 passing, 286 passing yards, and he also rushed for 47 rushing yards as well with 6 carries. So, I mean, Joe Webb had some bad plays, had some good plays, but I mean, you're just looking at consistency out of the quarterback position. So I think Joe Webb, his play will increase, even though he's playing a slightly better defense and this week in the Detroit Lions, but I think he'll end up having a pretty solid game. And I think the Houston Texans are pretty set at their backup quarterback position for 2019. Then you got to look at halfback Duke Johnson. So they just recently acquired halfback Duke Johnson. I'm not expecting to see a lot of him simply for the fact that you don't really want to play your best guys in the preseason. But I think we're going to see him get a couple of carries. He'll probably get about 4 or 5 carries. And I think that's probably the most action we'll see out of Duke Johnson. I really wouldn't be surprised if he ended up playing at all. This video is being pre-recorded, so things can change. But if Duke Johnson does play in this game, he'll probably only get 4 or 5 carries. Then the last guy watching this game is wide receiver Tyron Johnson. Now, Tyron Johnson was very, very solid. He had 2 receptions, 48 receiving yards. He also got targeted a couple of good times as well. So I'm going to be eager to see what he ends up doing in this game versus the Detroit Lions. And then at the halfback position, I forgot a guy, Karan Higdon. Karan Higdon was very good as well. This guy had 8 carries, 37 rushing yards, and was averaging 4.6 yards per carry, and that's very good because, like I talked about earlier, anytime that you're able to average over 4 yards per carry in the preseason, I think you have a good chance of making the roster because you don't really see that a lot in the preseason, simply for the fact that you have a lot of backup offensive linemen in there and things like that, and also you have to spread the ball around. Then you're going to have to split carries with other like 3, 4, 5 different halfbacks on the roster as well. So it's really hard to kind of have a high yards per carry average in the NFL preseason because you can't really quite get in a rhythm as a halfback. And then the offensive lineman that you play with, the second and third stringers, most of those guys aren't even going to end up making the roster. So the blocking quality goes down a lot there. So Karan Higdon did very solid in that preseason matchup. And I'm eager to see what he does against the Detroit Lions, which does have a pretty good defensive line and a pretty good depth at that defensive line position. So I want to see what he does there. So this is it for my Houston Texans versus the Detroit Lions 2019 Week 2 NFL preseason preview. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comment section down below. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.